So I'd like to start by expressing just my appreciation for being here, for sharing this space and learning with you. And I have written out, so hopefully I'll stay on my time. It's definitely stretched my thinking around what it means to be living, but also starting to think around teaching in the Anthropocene, which is what I'd like to take up today, and in particular, selfishly, reflecting on the area which I'm teaching currently, which is health and physical education within the Master of Primary Teaching program. Within the action research tradition, I view my research as a living practice, and through this, I take on the risk that I might, through my teaching and research, realize that I am a living contradiction, but through that then be able to not be paralyzed by it, but continue on in terms of my own reflective learning and action. I identify perhaps in many hats, but as an outdoor educator, but also I position myself somewhat as a health educator here in terms of my discussion and 3 points of reflection really. This practice has allowed me to work with children in many diverse contexts, and through this work I started thinking about the relationships between movement, place, and well-being, and individually the role I have to play in this, and particularly as we know in the primary years, it includes what is often considered a critical window in terms of children's development around self-concept, self-esteem, thoughts around body and being. So the previous presentations have really helped to challenge me in thinking what I can take forward in this area. I recently spent some time with 3 Year 4 classes in Western Sydney schools, primary schools, and in carrying out some of this case study research with the students and teachers on their views around outdoor play and also within a physical education context. The research itself involved field visits for unstructured play as well as some structured physical education, as well as a series of visual methods, including some drawing or mapping and photography as well, and then also discussions with the teachers. And for me, a part of this research was coming to engage with and learn about the place I had just moved to, and place for me in a cultural ecological sense. So the curriculum, the people, the connection with the school grounds, the built environment, and the natural environment. In a mapping exercise where we looked at a bird's eye view of the school grounds, we saw that the schools had many open spaces and green spaces interspersed in the usual school buildings. But when we started to map out some of that daily time that they have in schools, we saw that much of the outdoor time was quite limited. And even for the physical education time, which we know is declining as well, but within that time, within the recess and the lunch time, some of the access to those spaces was also further limited. And so it wasn't necessarily the limitations of space as much as maybe the structures around the use of space and thoughts around what those spaces were for children. The experience also made me think about the current state of the field and how health and physical education is deeply entwined with dominant body discourses, and in particular, overweight, obesity, and physical inactivity. And in practice, it seems that primary health and physical education is increasingly delivered as school sport and nutrition education, and it boils down to those two areas. The result is that the possibilities for alternative understandings of health, and in particular, those in relation to place and a sense of being, become marginalized, or particularly marginalized outside of health and physical education. So this is despite the fact that research in a number of fields has already established the important relationship between children's everyday environments and their health and well-being. So while many of us in this room may already be immersed with these areas, my intent really is to start to build this discussion to explore cross-curricular pathways. So with an area that's often left on the sidelines, so to speak. I refer to health and physical education and the curriculum at a time that's in transition. So the new curriculum has just been published and is awaiting final endorsement, and ACARA estimates that perhaps New South Wales Department of Education and Communities might hire some writers in 2015, which would mean the earliest implementation of that wouldn't be before 2017. Currently, the research shows that we generally don't have a clear picture of what's happening in either the health or physical education components. But we do know that contemporary notions of childhood, overweight, and obesity have become increasingly influential in the curriculum and pedagogy. The prominence of these discourses is notable in curriculum documents, as well as it seems in the school context. There's been an increasing focus in Australian school policies and programs to promote physical activity and nutritional practices to prevent childhood obesity. And this is reinforced by dominant health discourses, which are often rooted in largely Western scientific and medical knowledges. And to be honest, I would be lying if I said that if you walked past my own lecture halls while I was teaching, you wouldn't hear this language and you wouldn't hear these messages. But I also endeavor in that to challenge those health discourses and to position all young people and challenge that notion or position of young people as being at risk, or perhaps the relationship between optimal health and very particular, often fit sporting bodies. And and there's been reference to that also, how that impacts around both male and female typical bodies. So I recognize that from a curriculum and pedagogical perspectives, there are risks inherent in health and phys ed, engaging with discourses of health, obesity, and overweight, and more specifically with those discourses framed as crisis discourses. So within this context, what might be possibilities for moving forward? And so I have 3 points of reflection that have sort of emerged out of this and some thinking. First is to broaden the view and position of health and well-being. Second, integrating sustainability as a contemporary health issue. And third is to expand health and physical education curriculum possibilities and embodied learning. Together, these interrelated possibilities represent what could help shape a place-based approach for HPE, curriculum and pedagogy, that is more closely integrated into the overall primary curriculum. So the current focus on overweight and obesity has resulted in, as I've said, a narrowed focus around nutrition and physical activity. And we know that these relationships, even within the medical discourses, are already contested and they're complex. It's not just about energy intake and energy expenditure. But so although it's reductive, the alternative views around this are sometimes, and they're still considered in some ways as alternative, but into the discussions around well-being. What's well-being? So within the new curriculum, well-being is identified as a sense of satisfaction, happiness, effective social functioning and spiritual health, and the dispositions of optimism, openness, curiosity, and resilience. A more comprehensive view, or one that we might be familiar with, is that it's generally considered to be the integration of various dimensions that, when combined effectively, enhance an individual's quality of life across various domains, including emotional, physical, social, intellectual, occupational, and spiritual. Within recent years, as we know, there's been an increase in the research from various fields that demonstrates how interactions with the natural environment promote, particularly in relation to psychological well-being. And unsurprisingly, my school visits, many of the students' responses about their outdoor interactions and engagement referred to how they used the spaces, but then also how they felt when they were able to spend time in those spaces. And so we see here in Claire taking a photo of the bench. That's the central feature here. This photo was taken at the primary area. It's my favorite place because I can always go there and sit with my friends, or if I'm feeling sad or lonely, I always see people sitting and talking in the primary area, so that's why it's my first place to go. It makes me feel happy and excited because I'm at school with all my friends and teachers. In the students' pictures of their favorite outdoor school spaces, there are many stories of active play on the open field, on the courts, the equipment, and there were also stories of how the garden spaces were quiet and peaceful. In some cases, a sense of affinity to elements such as grass, trees, or plants. The students identified these as significant elements and felt compelled not only to take photographs of them, but also to discuss them as some of their favorite places. At the further risk of co-opting these images to illustrate my meaning, I think they lead into my second point of reflection, which is the need and opportunity to integrate sustainability as a contemporary health issue within the HP curriculum. Moving beyond a mere focus on individual level causes of disease, which has characterized modern epidemiology, is required. A new generation of public health research is addressing the health impacts of global issues such as poverty, urbanization, and globalization. And we know the adverse effects of each of these is often viewed as obstacles to sustainability, which is why environmental sustainability is now firmly a contemporary challenge for health researchers. This particular figure on the harmful effects of ecosystem change of ecosystem change on human health comes from the 2005 Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, and it demonstrates this. I think it also demonstrates, again, not just within what's currently captured in the HPE curriculum, but what ends up being taught to children still focuses around the food pyramid, the food groups, the food charts. Can we move beyond this? Are there opportunities to then integrate into those other areas? And perhaps, again, we can see the opportunities here to build parallels between health and sustainability frameworks. I believe that if there's that dialogue and that integration, that could be a new way of viewing how HPE is situated. But if it's not, then I do agree with position of colleagues of Gray and Martin who argue that HPE in its current sense will fail to recognize the importance of relationships with nature and outdoor engagement. Therefore, to truly embrace these tenets of promoting health, the practice needs to embrace environmental sustainability principles. And thinking about health and physical education in a new way. And in this sense, I draw on this water metaphor, that we could perhaps see health promotion practitioners and educators to adapt and improve their skills and knowledge to address the new challenges posed by environmental change. A new water metaphor may be needed to give meaning to the work we do. Like the water cycle, in constant change, renewal, and harmony, and inextricably connected to life, so too the work of the health practitioner or educator within sustainability imperatives will be characterized by these features. So we can see how these pictures perhaps are potential sites for rich learning, not only about the environment, but children's sense of being. Greg here writes, "This is at the front of the school. It's a beautiful place. I'm not allowed to play there." In Greg's photo, what are the possibilities here for learning about children's sense of connectedness with nature and how they experience engagement with nature's beauty, as is shown in research as well, to connect with our well-being? Or in Alex's photo, what are the entry points here to move beyond nutrition education to learn about local food production, sustainable consumption, or hunger and underconsumption, and how that links the local and global? Previous research, such as that by Tranter and Malone, has already suggested that if educators recognize school grounds as increasingly important sites for environmental learning, then no matter how limited the potential of the school grounds, they would make decisions that recognize their value as an integral dimension of children's learning. Which leads to my third point of reflection, which is to expand... Wait for time.
I'll give you one. You're okay.
I didn't get the 8 and the 3 minutes. The photographic examples, for me, they're not just children being outdoors. It's not just children playing. There's something more to their engagement that's involved in the movement, in and with space. The view begins to challenge the mind-body dualism, which often relegates HPE, and more specifically physical education, as being part of that, as being the part that deals solely with the body, and therefore learning can't take place through the movement. All 3 teachers I worked alongside expressed a belief in the importance of play and providing outdoor experiences to their students, but they all discussed the challenges of taking students outdoors during class times. Even though it was valued at the individual level, there were familiar concerns that classroom learning took precedence. Therefore, my intention here is to explore the possibilities of thinking about people as beings, necessarily connected to other beings, and as Dodd says, in turn linked to larger communities and settings. Challenging the mind-body dualism, particularly for HPE, allows us to express ourselves as social beings connected in body, mind, and spirit. So as I'm still working through the visual data produced by the students, much of it is focused on their PE experiences, which unsurprisingly is largely sport-focused currently. However, other stories start to reveal the relationships with space and place. Sorry. And so the last one I'll show here is Sophia. And she says, "My picture is the friendship garden because that is my most favorite place to play in, chat, sit, and eat in. I love this place because I like how people call it the friendship garden. Whenever I go in, I feel very calm and quiet, and it's like no one else can annoy you at all. And this is where Sophia could be an eco-femme warrior. She goes on to say, usually, me and my friends play at the garden and we have lots and lots of fun there. I like to play there because it keeps me calm and friendly. Usually I turn into a tiger when I'm mad. The garden makes me feel very happy and calm at the same time because I love my friends and I would never want the garden to be knocked down. Through our discussions, the student began to share their stories of place, not just as a physical location in the school or community, but also as social locations. The student's narrative suggests a relationship with place that was also connected to physicality, movement, and play. So in my conclusion, at this potentially defining time for HPE, perhaps a place-based pedagogy can expand curriculum possibilities by positioning environmental sustainability as integral to health and well-being. Reid argues that one of the features of a contemporary world is that the approach to issues, problems, and challenges requires us to cross established disciplinary boundaries, not remain trapped in them. So this will involve thinking about health and phys ed in new ways. This will be the practice I hope to take up with my pre-service teaching. Lastly, there's a need to build the parallels between well-being and sustainability frameworks in order to implement health and physical education in a way that fosters embodied learning experiences for students, which may be catalysts towards deeper connections with self and others.